before, that they never thought about it before. And I think that's when you have a lot of creativity. So for example, in the AR space, in emerging technology, let me try to broaden it a bit. When you're in that space, usually you're working with a technology that is existing, that does not really have a user value yet.
Yeah.
And designer will need to create scenarios and meaningful values to justify the existence of the technology.
Right.
Such as AR, or AR, they try to justify, yeah, we can do gaming, we can identify objects.
Yep.
I mean, another thing would be like, for example, Samsung. We went to Korea, we saw these like beautiful curved screen, and they would be asking us, well, what do you think we can do with this thing? And we're like, no, haven't you thought about it? The scientists would keep coming with really interesting technologies, and the designers would just have to wrap our head around it and say, all right, we need to design a scenario for that. So sometimes it's very reverse.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like something that on the consumer side you really have to tackle, right? Because there's a core technology. You kind of have to go find the market for it as well, the opportunities, as you said.
Exactly. So, what was the original question?
The original, I guess this got digressed into something really interesting. The original question was actually, what's the biggest problem that you're trying to solve right now?
Okay. Well, the biggest problem for me is kind of similar to what you were talking about. Is that at PlayStation we're not really solving huge world problems. I mean, we are solving the problem of boredom, essentially, or how to
it's a huge problem. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
But there's a lot of things that you can do now that you have a computer in your hand that can cure boredom. So we're really competing for a lot of other things that are pulling people's attention now that weren't always there. So how do you remain engaging at the forefront of people's minds? How do you make them get home, get on their couch, put the controller in their hand, rather than just play on their phone or on their computer? Because that's a cool alternative too.
That's true. So actually switching gears a bit and more talking about your jobs. What do you love and hate about your job, your role?
I love that I get to go to Tokyo as much as I want. That's super fun.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's a perk? Oh man, that's awesome.
Do you not like Tokyo?
No, I love Tokyo. I'm just surprised. That's a perk. That's awesome.
It's a perk or a drag depending on how you look at it. I try to see the positive.
Awesome.
And I guess the hard part of my job is half of my team is located in Tokyo, and they are 16 hours ahead. So just scheduling, and their work hours are shifted. They don't start until about 10 or 10:30. So weeknight meetings are a very regular thing. Communication, understanding Japanese culture, which is unlike any other international company I've ever worked at. So.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to pick her.
So Japan, I guess, was the good and the bad.
Let me see. I think it is sometimes for a designer it is hard for us to kind of get narrowed down and then get heads into the design task every day. Like, okay, scrums, stand-ups, working with a design team, product team, getting the specs out, working on your wireframes. It can get boring. It can get just like, all right, why am I doing this every day? And I would like to think about it as there's a parallel path that exists in my head that I'm actually designing for something bigger than that. And I think that keeps my interest and creativity going.
Right.
So in the AR company, I would always think about why are we discussing all these weird lingos and all these like meaningless stuff, right? But in the back of my head, I'm trying to think, I am designing for the future of AR. That is so cool. And like right now in Coursera, yes, I'm doing a bit of web design, responsive design. It's kind of boring sometimes, but I try to keep myself up above the forest and think, I am designing for the future of education. That is really cool stuff. That people across the world can have access to education that they wouldn't have access to. So if you can keep this mental model in your mind, that actually is a very healthy thing to do, I think.
So for me, what I love and hate about my job or line is, it's almost the same thing. It's as a designer, as a UX designer, we as a team come across to the rest of the cross-functional team saying that UX or design is not just a design team's job. It's the entire company's job. It's the product manager's job. They need to think about product design. It's the engineering team's job. They need to think about design or the users. And so we want to evangelize design. And on the other hand, when we get feedback, like, hey, you know, why have you done this design, that design, and people come across as everybody's a designer, which we are.
Right, yeah.
The designers come back complaining that, oh, the people don't trust my design. I am the person who got a degree in design, and these people are just telling me how to design. And so in my job, I have to kind of balance this every single day. I have to encourage the people to give the feedback for the design, but at the same time, keep the balance on that we have the say, because we still know the reasons, we know the users better, and how do I influence that and not really come across as, oh, because I did a degree, you need to listen to me, rather than, oh, because this is the reason. And so influencing everybody for the right design is hard, but at the same time, that's the challenging part. So it's the same thing that I love and hate both.
No, definitely, actually. I mean, to add to your point, I remember there was one specific experience at Niantic Labs around the first game, Ingress, that basically the product manager and the engineering team, they rolled out this new feature. It was basically a worldwide kind of like multiplayer game feature, right? And it actually prompted a lot of cheating. And the thing is, from a user operations standpoint, that was my team, right? We're basically mitigating the cheating aspect of users. And the thing is that security was not necessarily built in. Right? It attracted so many cheaters that we actually dubbed the feature like Project Honeypot, and then actually use it as a way to catch basically bad players, right? So after that, we had a kind of retrospective or post-mortem really talking about, okay, how do we actually incorporate security, anti-cheating stuff into the actual design of new features coming out? Because there's a lot of blindsidedness on other parts of the organization sometimes, right? So this actually leads to my next question, which is there some, a specific experience that, you or your company, you wish had done differently? And if you could do it over again, what would you have done differently?
Oh yeah, so as the same thing, we have to influence the cross-functional team to go a certain direction. And there are times when, the product manager feels differently because he has this thing in his mind that, oh, what I am thinking should be the solution. And many times in-house teams, we were talking about this, so in-house teams probably, they have this passion that, whatever we're going to design, because we're going to see the numbers move up and down. And so probably they protest too much. And I've seen for some of the projects, those product managers went to external agencies to get those products launched.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the fun part was the agency just designed it because they didn't know the background. And the product flopped. The agency got their money, so even if they are to blame, they don't mind it.
No, I mean, the incentive structure is completely lopsided, right? They don't own the product, they don't really see the end users either.
Right, so I just wish that, if in those terms, they would kind of trust the in-house teams more, rather than going to agencies. But I've seen that trick in many other companies too. I've talked to a few people, and it's the same thing. If the in-house passionate team designers, they don't listen, you just go to the agencies to get it done, but it generally flops.
Actually, in the London startup that I was part of, right, before I joined, the founders had already sunk $100,000 into an external agency to design the MVP on Marvel, right? And it's like, guys, I mean, that was basically the first thing that I kind of cut off, actually, because I was like, we have to own the design, we have to own the user learnings as well, right? So to your point.
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, the question is there a specific experience that you or your company you wish that you had done differently?
Yes, got it. Okay, so I'm going to give an example of the AR company. We had so at the time we have to work on a very powerful feature on 3D, and none of us are really 3D users, power users.
Right.
And we're just designers. We can design anything. And with the engineering team, they came from a very strong 3D background, like from DreamWorks. So people with really deep insight on how this tool will work. So when we try to design the tool for regular users, these are novice users who does not have any 3D background. We have a lot of clashes. So the engineering team will be like, no, you cannot do this. We have to have a timeline. It's an industry standard, for example. And designer will be like, we don't need to have a timeline. Look at PowerPoint, they don't have a timeline. Or look at keynotes, you can do animation, you don't need a timeline. Something like that. So we went to a lot of back and forth on all these powerful features that needs to be implemented in place, but the design team was pushing back and say this is too complex.
Yeah.
It's almost like he say, she say, and we're just wasting a lot of time doing these debates.
Right.
So what I wish could have done better is for designers to become more like a facilitator and bring people on early on in the process.
Yeah.
So maybe doing a workshop, doing a brainstorming sessions, doing a kickoff, not necessarily getting people's feedback, but more like giving them a platform to talk about things, to talk about what is important to them, what is their priority. That way you can clear out a lot of paths. And for them to understand, okay, when design comes up with the features, this is something I have input on earlier. It will carry on very smoothly. Yeah.
So for me, I don't have a specific example or company in mind because this is something I have done a few times that I would do differently, and I am conscious of it now, is I have been that vocal in-house designer that says, this idea sucks, I don't want to do something that sucks, this is going to flop for sure, user research is saying, users are saying this other thing, I don't want to do this, and I have dug my heels in the ground, and I have
stand your ground.
And I have gotten levels up, and I realize now that I am more mature and older, I guess. That is not always the best way to do it, and I often wish if I could go back in time, I would have just, I could have spent that time that I spent raising issues, just quickly prototyping and testing, and maybe showing them the right way, like getting to the right design faster, rather than using my words.
Okay. So, I mean, that also takes that takes more effort as well, right? In order to kind of
Yes and no, it's not effortless
Sure.
to raise
It's more
ruffle
effective.
feathers and go over people's heads. I mean, that has repercussions. Like you may win, the battle, but lose the war.
Yeah.
And I think in my experience, I have done that.
Yeah. So better to just prototype it, show them kind of the initial results.
Case by case basis. I'm thinking of my own personal experience, and there have been a couple of times where looking back on it, it would have been easier to just design it their way and design it another way, and maybe just go through that process. Like it probably would have been less time.
Yeah, got it. Well, thank you all for sharing that. That's really important. So switching gears a little bit, what has been the most surprising, I guess, trend or something that's come up over the past 3 years when it comes to design? Or
Surprising in a good way? Or
surprising, good way, bad way, influential.
You know what I hate? I shop online all the time, and
Same here.
I'm guilty of designing, gated sign-up modals only because, I was told I had to, but I hate that denial message that's like, no, I hate getting coupons, or no, I do free stuff that every e-commerce site uses. Why? It wasn't funny or cute the first time.
Do you think that works though? I mean, that's why they keep on using it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Tell me. Has anyone ever A/B tested that?
I mean, I definitely clicked on those coupons before. Pretty guilty.
I have too, but not because of some message making me feel guilty about it.
Okay.
I'm gonna end with that.
So speaking of trends, I think trends comes and goes, and sometimes they go away, they come back as a V2. I think that goes with a lot of technology. So let's just say, I think lately you've heard about big data was once very wow, trendy, hyped. And then we heard about Internet of Things, wow, this is so cool. And then next we heard 3D printing and face recognition, and then it just
AI in general, right?
Exactly. And then it is interesting to see all these signals popping up. But it's also important to understand behind the technology there is a human needs, and to identify what that human needs is really what's the interesting thing. It's not really the technology. So trends, I do think it comes and goes. You actually can identify a lot of, or can learn a lot about the trends from sci-fi, sci-fi movies. I watch a lot of really old sci-fi movies, and it really talks about the cultural value of people's perception during that time. For example, I think in the 50s, they talk a lot about the future kitchen aids because that's the end of the World War II.
IoT.
Exactly, all the kitchens are super futuristic, but you never see them, right?
Yeah.
You never see Rosie or the robot, the domestic robot coming out, but you do see the Roomba right now. It's coming out as not really a V2, but as a V5. They kind of come around and sweep your floors. So I do think they come back, but in a different form.
Yeah, for me, I think the voice interface and the voice recognition really is way more developed than it was 3 years back. And so with that, the new hope that voice is going to be able to take care of a lot of stuff is also happening, because if you actually see cars and the cars with their dashboards, 3 years back they were going in the direction that they were almost putting their mobile phone in the dashboard. So you could just see a bigger dashboard and with touch screen, and that's definitely not making the car driving any safer, because you're just looking at that and you're getting messages and your touch screen and everything is very cool, but in a way your cell phone in a bigger format. But with this voice, I think they're coming up with cars which now you can just do voice and there is no visual, right? And that's exactly what you need for a car UI. Have nothing to see because the driver needs to see in the front and not get distracted with the dashboard at all. So I think there's a lot of potential in the voice UI, and because the recognition just improved drastically over the last 2 years.
That's right.
3 years back, if I could talk, I would always say they don't understand my accent at all. I could worse for my friends. So it's like we have this heavy accent which they could only identify a certain type. But now it's with Alexa, Google, you're just doing fine.
No, definitely, yeah. That's super fascinating, actually. It seems like voice has reached almost a technological tipping point, right? Because 1 unit of technological performance does not equal 1 unit of adoption. It's almost like for voice recognition, it has to reach, let's say, 99%, 99.5% comprehension in order for that tipping point to just take off, right? And actually, speaking of voice UI, that has a lot of repercussions probably for AR as well, since if we move to a screenless and hands-free kind of interface, that's probably pretty impactful. So actually, related to that question is, in the next 3 years, what do you see as the most impactful thing for the profession of design? Any takers? Good or bad, actually?
So I don't yet know the impact, but I know when I first got my job out of school, UX was so new. I was the first and only UX person at my company. And frequently, after that, when I was interviewing for my next job, I was still the first UX person at that company. So all of us have done a lot of paving the way already for what is UX. Now, most people know about it. Most companies have at least one. But now there's all these senior UX leaders. There's VPs of UX. There's more and more C-level UX people, not as much, but
do they call them CDOs or?
At SAP, he was Chief Design Officer.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do think that will have an impact on the industry as the directors of design today, 3 years from now, move up in the ranks, and that continually happens. I think it will have a really positive impact on the design community and the overall feelings that we have now of still feeling like we need to fight for UX. Hopefully that will lessen it.
Nice.
I do think in the near future, product designers or UX designers will need to incorporate more of the business acumen into their profession. Because when designers just design, we can only have so much impact. We can only influence so much. We have product launch and that's pretty much it, and we get users' feedback and we iterate on it. But with better business acumen, you can actually think about how can you better design a team? How can you better design a business? And you can actually influence the design, the company or organization in a more broader format. Not just the design that we're looking at in the artificial format, artifacts, yeah. So I think it's more than the artifacts. It transcends into the process itself.
So just to understand the question is more like, what do we see UX design be in 3 years' time?
Or any, major impacts to it. All right.
So I feel that technology is there, and we have voice and we have AR and VR. We're talking about all these technologies, but we haven't been able to think about their omnipresence, like an end-to-end experience, and we haven't defined that yet. And that will probably be defined in the next 3 years as to how AR and VR. It's like they unify with the voice,
right.
and then there will be an experience which is seamless for the user.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter which device he is in, or where he is, or how is he interacting with the world. It could be in any way,
Right.
but that would become seamless. And so the user experience designer needs to think through not only the technology, but kind of the end-to-end omnipresence experience, as you would call it. And that would be really interesting because technology has arrived, but the experience has not been defined yet.
That's right. That's actually very similar to, kind of related to another designer who once told me that, in future with AI, IoT, and everything together, like the technology where the user interface kind of blends into the background. Actually, it's very human-centric.
And we are just trying to kind of use the existing interactions, like touch and swipe and voice, and I think there has to be something new. In the next few years, it should be that we're coming up with something different.
Right.
But at this point, we don't have anything. Even Google, Microsoft, they are using the existing interactions.
That's right.
Of the mobile phone, as you would say, right? So it's the same interactions, but if the UI is changing and the device is changing, or it's becoming screen-less, then the interaction should also be changing.
Well, on that note, actually, do you have, all three of you, do you guys have advice essentially for the designers in the room as well as the designer, want to be as well?
For me, I just go with this one simple thing that what Steve Jobs kept saying is that design is not just how it looks and feels; it's how it works, and that's what I kind of keep it as my center point. Is whenever I'm designing something, it needs to solve a problem, and it needs to solve the problem the right way, not just making things beautiful.
Cool. I also would like to say, I think designers have many types. I think each of us here brings in a very different type of talent and background to design. And make sure you understand your strength and understand what you're really good at and bring that into design. Whether or not it's like me, very analytical, being a scientist before, or it could be someone with a psychology background or something that is completely unrelated. All these things will help you to become a better designer. So find that thread. Find that thread to make you become a very unique designer, not just like one of those UX designers. Because I don't believe in that. I think each UX designers are very unique by themselves. So I hope you guys will find that soon.
I think you also, as a new designer, just have to design a lot, and don't worry, or you are going to worry if you're anything like me, but that a lot of the design you put out there, it's not going to be perfect. Not everything is going to be the best design. You're not always going to be super proud. You're going to be influenced by product managers, engineers, limitations, or whatever there may be, and it's okay.
It's going to be okay, yes. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last part of the interview, which is one of my favorite parts, which is the rapid fire questions. So you have about 30 seconds or less to answer it. Pretty simple, actually. So Alessa, we're going to start with you since you ended up with the mic. All right, ready? So first question is, what's your favorite book, and or a book that you're currently reading?
All right, I've got a good one, and I hope everyone in this room picks it up. It's called The Uterus is a Feature, Not a Bug, written by Sarah Lacy. No,
I heard about that.
It's a great book. It really changed the way that I view the culture in Silicon Valley.
Thank you.
And it's kind of rare that I find a book like that. So. Is it on to the next?
Yes.
I just got 1984 by Orwell, so I'm looking forward to read that. I heard so many good things about it, and yeah, I just can't wait to see what kind of insights I can see from this book.
Currently, I'm reading a Radical Candor. It's about giving the right feedback to the team, so that So I am now managing people, and it's not always the right thing to be nice and say, oh, that's awesome design, but also at the same time, if they're successful, but at the same time, how to give a good feedback that is only taking them to the next level rather than just keep them where they are. So the book is really nice. I've just read like 3 chapters, but yeah, it's really awesome.
That's great. Keep in mind. The next question is going to be, what is one daily habit that you can't live without?
Browsing and reading the blogs and websites. I just need to do that in any form. And it's not that I just go to one single site. It could be somebody just put something on LinkedIn, and then I just went to that site and then read about it, and then that site had some other links, and then kept on reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just something I cannot do without. And now it's coming into this morning thing that I get up in the morning and I'm looking at the things, but I'm like, oh, I should be wasting my time in the morning. So in the nighttime, it just happens that I cannot let the phone go, cell phone browsing.
Does that ever, I guess, make you sleep way past your optimal bedtime?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're
And every
definitely
day
the
I'm
right
like, I
profession.
should. So Adriana Huffington, she is, she's the CEO, and she always also says that you should be sleeping. And so I was like, I need to read her book and encourage myself to sleep.
Yeah.
But every single day, it's just that I just read past, and I'm like, I should be sleeping now. Oh, but maybe like 10 more minutes. And then I just finish this article and then I go to sleep. But I think that's, it's just a bad habit of reading.
Or good habit, actually, because I have a huge pocket backlog, so that's inspiring for me to go through it. But,
So I feel like we always have endless to-do lists every day. So I made a habit right now before the end of the day. I would actually reflect for 10 minutes what I have done today. Like a way to celebrate your milestones. We cannot just always check box and write a long check box. But what boxes have you checked today? Or what have you done today? And then kind of also set a theme for tomorrow. So for example, I can set a theme, tomorrow's work from home day, I want to be productive. Or it can simply just be, I want to be happy, or I just want to call my mom. Something like that. That actually sets a really good tone for the next day, and for me to wrap up the end of the day.
I think you should write a book on this.
And actually, for people in the room, there's a tool that helps with that reflection as well. It's called the 5-minute journal, which I actually started and then it has fallen on the wayside. So this is inspiring for me to go back into that.
So both of your habits sound really aspirational. I drink coffee every day. That is my for sure
Me
habit.
too. There you go.
I'm trying to think of one that's like work related and maybe going to benefit anyone in this room. So if you get a job or work in technology, it could be likely that your partner is also in technology. I know that my partner is a UX engineer, so it's pretty hard for us to not just come home and just talk at each other about our jobs.
Right.
So
it's like more work, right, as well.
it's like the work there, the line is blurred, and we know the same
Yes.
players from the same companies had the same coworkers. So we, as a rule, 9 o'clock just cut it off. There's no work talk after 9, and then we
That's
just
awesome.
come back to reality.
So no blog reading for you at past 9?
Past 11.
I read blogs, but not the work-related ones.
Right, okay.
I do read them after 9.
And what's one thing that you're most excited about, Easels?
Just in general,
Listen to it.
what am I most excited about?
Or excited about? Not most. Most is a little extreme.
I just got a house, so I was
nice.
previously living in a
Okay.
very tiny apartment, so I am super excited to decorate. Interior
Yes.
decorating is something I've always wanted to do. I feel like it is a luxury of people in the suburbs who get to do that, and so I am definitely excited for that.
Congrats.
Again, another non-work related thing.
Yep.
Something that we're excited about. I'm excited about the future of education.
That's how you wake up in the morning too.
Exactly.
Right?
That keeps me awake in the morning and be very pumped. This is what I'm doing every day now. I'm very happy about it.
Nice.
For me, I think I'm looking into this AR, VR technology and how it's going to look into in the retail space, because based on my research, they haven't really cracked the retail space yet. So they have smart glasses which look into a lot of technical stuff. They could look into some wires and then say which wires needs to be fixed and stuff, but how to encourage people to buy. that's something that I am looking into and researching, and that's really fun because it's building trust, making people buy, and also kind of using the new technologies that are available.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was working, but I just do that.
No, I mean, that's why you're at Macy's, right? So, I've been monopolizing this entire stage for the longest time, so I would like to open it up to the audience now. Do I have a mic to kind of
Unfortunately, just that one at the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think these are working.
Those are
right?
live there. Yeah.
They're live? Okay, cool.
I can pass around the microphone to anybody who has a question. So just one question here.
Great speeches. I'm so glad I came tonight. Thank you. Question. Sometimes I think that programming, I'm before you guys, like there's the back end, front end, and then making it beautiful. It seems to me like a lot of that is all processing other people's thoughts. And so you as a designer, you have to like execute what someone back here thought up. Jonathan Ivey, big guy at Apple, seems to me like he had a bit more effort to like push back. How do you guys see your role in product development itself, and how do you get that circuit back to the people that are making the decisions that we all have to live with, but you have to implement?
I'm not sure that your statement accurately reflects my experience. I don't know about you guys. It's typically a little bit reversed, where we're early on in the process, partnering with product managers, often engineers or engineering leadership that are involved. So we're all kind of on board with what we're building. And we go through several design iterations usually before we land on something. And it's usually something we mostly all agree with. I talked about this earlier. You're always, as a designer, going to have to make some concessions, but it's usually not the extreme you just described, because I would guess there'd be a lot of quitting designers that would have that scenario.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. It's rare that we see that, and it's more like a culture thing. Yeah.
So you say it comes from you guys, it's from the other side.
Yeah, usually design comes in really early on in most of the companies that I work for, and it's pretty easy to get buy-in. And yes, we sometimes may need to suggest certain things that we need to get some people coming along with us, but we never really need to put up, a big battle for that.
Okay, I think what you were asking was, how do you push back if something has been told that you need to do that? And yes, there are times when product managers will come in and say that we need to do a certain number of things because we have the technology and we need to make money out of it. So the way I generally do it is ask a question as to what problem we are solving. Because if you're not really solving a problem, then people are not going to use the product. So there has to be certain KPIs associated with the reasoning as to why they are doing or pushing for it. And there has to be a middle ground that we usually take. It's not just my way or the highway, because at the end of the day, both the designer and the product managers and the engineers all are working towards the same direction, is making or selling good products to the users. It's just that tussle is actually a healthy tussle. You need to have that tussle, and it's made, the three teams are made in such a way that they work towards the same direction, but they have different goals. So it's a healthy tussle to have, and that's what we do every day. Sometimes we win, sometimes we just take the middle path, sometimes we go to the users again and bring back more data.
Okay, we've got a question in the back.
Hi, great talk. So I'm curious, if you've interviewed candidates for design positions, what are your favorite questions for them and why?
I like to ask them to describe a scenario on how they would tackle a certain project and just see how they unravel the process. Because by them explaining to me the process, it would reveal to me how experienced they are, have they done this before, or are they just talking buzzwords?
Yeah, for me, I tend to ask some behavioral questions. Tell me a situation, because because from then, we are trying to kind of gauge how did they, to this question, push back, because the negotiating skills the designer needs to have, at the same time balance it out, is very important, because you need to be a good designer, which you're already seeing in your portfolio and your designs, but when you're able to influence the team, and that's what I'm actually looking at, is what are your influencing skills? Because that's the way you're going to then be able to influence the cross-functional product as well as engineering to kind of create good designs. And that's what I'm looking at, is their collaborative and influencing skills.
So I also am a fan of the scenario questions, and I generally like to participate in them because I like to see what it would be like to work with that person. I'm also going to add my least favorite question that I have been asked, and I'll never ask this. What is your superpower?
What's your answer?
I don't have a good one. I've never liked it.
Any other? Yeah, got one over there.
Oh, hi. First, I want to say great talk. I have a PlayStation and I use Coursera. Although I generally turn off Menfee because it annoys me. But thank you. So I am a UX researcher. So I really love your talk. You brought up a lot of good points. Someone should have done better user research on this microphone.
I think you can just probably shout as well.
You just right in front of the microphone. If you want to come over here, it should be okay.
Oh, okay.
It's terrible UX, like you said.
Yes, this is a failure of user research for you. So on that note, you brought up a lot of good points. I can tell that all three of you value research in your product cycle, which I love hearing about. This is as much as a comment as it is a question. And I think very briefly talking about my journey as a researcher and designer will help inform this comment. So I started off in the cognitive sciences, and I mostly did UX design with a little bit of research. And I used to think research was this cute thing that I did to please my advisor. What I really cared about was building stuff. Over time, the more research I did, the more I realized that good design always comes out of research. And the more research I did, and the earlier I did it, honestly, the point of researching users before you design anything, the more I realized that I always kind of wondered what makes a good designer. Were good designers born? Did they have some special talent? Over time, I realized what made a good designer is largely how well they iterated things with users, that the users are what make the design good. And if you have a good process of getting that feedback very early on, there's no reason why the design should ever be bad. Some designers are obviously better at others, but I just feel like a strong culture of research from the very earliest, most formative stages down to the very most late stages, I mean, far before any actual development occurs, is what really ensures that the product is strong, is user-centered, and it's effective. So I'm kind of wondering a little bit about your experiences with the design process and the research process, how much you think research is valued, which I know you all do value, and how much do you think really extensive, really well-planned research can ensure a product is good in the end?
I can take up that first. So thank you for your question. I think research is extremely important, but when we talk about research, people usually think about usability research. That's when things are already designed and we show it to the user and they give us feedback. I see research a lot more than that. I see research also as being very beginning of the process where we do generative research and collect insights. That's when we can start brainstorming and get new features even before a feature is born. And there's also a type of research where you just want to